After running for a few moments down the dark hallway with little light available, we luckily found Clyde. He was entering a neat room, about to close the door, but noticed us running towards him. The people chasing behind us turned around and headed back to the auditorium at the sight of Clyde. Adeline and I both entered the room as quickly as possible, locking the door behind us. Clyde, oh my god, you won't believe what we saw in that auditorium, Adeline sobbed profusely. Adeline let go of my hand and jumped into Clyde's arms. Clyde pushed Adeline off of him as Adeline was tearing up. Leo, what in the world happened? Clyde asked, wearing a confused expression due to our sudden appearance. Well, long story short, we saw Mayor Xavier's body, I bluntly replied. What? You saw Mayor Xavier's body in the auditorium? When? Clyde was completely shocked, his mouth becoming a round O. When they called everybody into the auditorium using the intercom, they presented a show where they showed off Mayor Xavier's body in a golden coffin. Then a group of men chased us out of the auditorium after Adeline puked. If we were any slower, we'd be dead right now. I was panting by the time I finished speaking. I was talking too quickly. Adeline puked? Why? Is it because of the dead body? Clyde facetiously said. Well, no kidding, Clyde. That's a disgusting sight to see. Of course she would puke, I sneered. Clyde's face lit up after a few seconds of silence. So that explains the voice I heard on the intercom and the rush of people coming down the hallway. Clyde began to zone out, then finished by saying, I hid in a closet in the hallway till the flood of people disappeared. I didn't want to get caught down here. Adeline continued crying on the ground as I continued explaining the situation to Clyde. Well, it doesn't matter anymore, because we're all safe. Well, our guys saw where Mayor Xavier's body was, and now we know who has his body. Did you take it or anything? Clyde became serious as his body language closed. Nope. Clyde's expression turned angry as his eyes narrowed. Are you stupid? Wouldn't you die for his body if it meant retrieving it to City Hall? I was taken aback by Clyde's extreme animosity. You should have died if it meant retrieving his body. Now it's probably too late to retrieve it. Clyde scoffed in annoyance as he picked his walkie-talkie up and radioed for backup to Greenfield High School. I knew that Clyde felt disappointment in me, but I didn't care. I did the best I could, and so did Adeline. I'm getting some officers over so we can seize the building and hopefully retrieve Mayor Xavier's body. Did anything else happen in that auditorium? Clyde sternly asked. The principal was leading the show. He opened the golden coffin and revealed his body in there. Adeline blurted as she continued bawling out, much harder now. The principal betrayed us. He works with the bully group, or the Clyde killers, or whatever their names are. What? The principal? You mean the principal of Greenfield High School? Clyde exclaimed. Clyde picked up his walkie-talkie again and radioed for even more backup. You can't make this stuff up. He's been working here for the past 15 years and has a clean slate. He was always a man with integrity and pride. I can't believe he would do something so dirty. Clyde seemed more upset and annoyed than ever before. That's one part I forgot to tell him about our auditorium visit, but it was the part I should have told him first. So we're getting a new principal then? I took a few huge steps across the room after I spoke, standing far away from Clyde and Adeline. I don't know. Firstly, we're getting backup to seize and investigate the building. Second, we're taking the principal into custody. Lastly, we're hopefully getting Mayor Xavier's body and shutting the school down tomorrow. So stay at home and continue reading up on Gabriel's journal if you can. Clyde had a very serious expression on his face as he paced back and forth in the room. Adeline's loud sobbing had transitioned to a quiet and slow cry, and right as I was stuck in a deep train of thought, the power suddenly shut off in the whole building. The room was pitch black like the rest of the basement, and it seemed as if the whole world froze as Adeline, Clyde, and I were all engulfed in fear. What's going on? Adeline stuttered, her speech slurred by an inevitable cry of despair coming from herself. It seemed like somebody cut the power down here, Clyde assertively said as he clicked his flashlight's power button a few times in the darkness. Oh God, Clyde muttered in the darkness. Why? What? What's wrong? I asked, my fear disappearing as I began feeling the same assertiveness Clyde was feeling. My flashlight is dead, Clyde whispered in the darkness. Try to turn your guys' flashlights on. I grabbed my flashlight and tried turning it on. Surprisingly, mine was dead too. Adeline clicked her flashlight's power button, and though the flashlight flickered for a few moments, it quickly shut off. We were all met with the realization that all of our flashlights were completely dead. I could feel a part of myself disappear. With the power out and no light to guide us in this eerie basement, there was an almost guaranteed chance we were gonna die. What do we do with our flashlights? Dead, Adeline cried in the pitch black room. We have two options now. We run, to an exit, or we hide and wait for backup, Clyde gulped in fear. After Clyde spoke, I could feel my heart in my throat as two men began banging on the room door. The banging was so ferocious and incessant that the door was definitely going to come down within seconds. Hiding wasn't an option anymore, and so was running. Our only true option was to submit to whatever fate wanted for us all. Get out of the room. We know you're in here. As two men banged on the door and shouted profanities and threats to us all, I realized that the men behind the door were two people I would have never expected. The principal and Gabriel Johnson. Dear God, we really were going to die down here. Get out of here before I make you. Clyde yelled, backing away from the door as it collapsed in the darkness, revealing the principal and Gabriel, both dressed in black, holding flashlights. Adeline screamed as she ran around the room. I stood behind Clyde as the principal, who was holding up a gun at Clyde, was about to pull the trigger. Wait, Clyde Smith? What? The principal was in shock as he pulled the gun down. Gabriel, Adeline shrieked in fear. You're the one who killed... I killed the mayor, Gabriel said with a disturbing grin. Yes, Adeline, you're right. Principal Connor Smith, Clyde muttered under his breath. It's you, the one person I thought I trusted. You're why I expelled you from Greenfield High School last year. I didn't want you knowing about the plan I was doing with my amazing students and Mr. Franklin. Principal Smith chuckled. But I was in my senior year. You shouldn't have expelled me if I was so close to finishing. You had no reason to expel me from Greenfield High School, but now that I know why you did, I'm not too upset anymore, Clyde scoffed. And now that I get to talk to you face to face, I want to know what you did with Mayor Xavier's body. Both the principal and Gabriel stood in silence, flashlights in their hands. You came for Mayor Xavier's body? Gabriel laughed as he stepped closer to Adeline. Adeline, you didn't report me to City Hall, did you? Gabriel laid his gun on Adeline's neck, hand on the trigger. You were in the circus with Christopher when I killed Mayor Xavier. You didn't hear a yelp of pain? You didn't smell anything? Adeline stayed silent. She silently shook her head. Gabriel stepped away from Adeline as he walked over to me. Leo, Gabriel rejoiced. I knew you worked with these scumbags. I knew it. You go to Greenfield High School by the name of David Martinez, right? I stood in silence as Principal Smith stood with Gabriel, both of them aiming guns right at me. Once we kill him, he'll be a fine addition to our collection of dead bodies, Gabriel said. I stood in silence, in complete silence, a tear falling down my cheek as Clyde and Adeline both stared at me. Principal Smith and Gabriel both loaded their guns. Do you think you guys can kill him? Clyde joked. Oh, shut up, Clyde. Gabriel turned around and pulled the trigger at Clyde. I gasped in horror as the bullet ricocheted off the metallic wall, hitting Gabriel directly in the head. Gabriel screamed in pain as he fell to the floor, his gun dropping along with him. You killed Mayor Xavier, and I will never forgive you for your actions. Clyde grabbed Gabriel's gun and shot directly at Gabriel's temple, killing him on the spot. Mayor Xavier's killer was dead now. Oh, you rascal, Principal Smith screeched like a little child as he threw a punch directly into Clyde's face. Die, die, die! Clyde was attempting to back away from Principal Smith, though to no luck. Each punch the principal threw at Clyde didn't come silently or clean. Each one spilled blood from his temple, and each one made a bone-tingling crack, signaling the fracture of many bones in Clyde, though I later found out he never fractured any bones. I couldn't do anything except watch Clyde being beaten up, but as I blinked, I missed it. The killing of Principal Smith. Both Gabriel and Principal Smith were dead. Blood splattered from Principal Smith's body onto my face. I watched in shock as Clyde stood up, threatening to pass out in front of us. His face was drenched in blood, and his eyes were darker than the night sky. He looked completely unrecognizable. Clyde? I tapped Clyde's shoulder. He seemed completely unresponsive. It's fine. We killed them both. I always told myself I'd sacrifice myself. I'd sacrifice myself if it meant justice. Clyde collapsed onto the concrete floor, his bloody face brushing against my shirt as he fell. Clyde, wake up! I kneeled down, checking Clyde's pulse. The room smelled like blood and death. I felt a piece of myself completely disappear when I couldn't feel a pulse from Clyde. Police car, September 2nd, 2019, 5:36 p.m. Being driven home in the police car that came to Greenfield High School was incredibly depressing. Clyde had been taken into the ICU, and the doctor said that he should be able to live. He passed out due to lack of blood, but that didn't explain why I couldn't feel his pulse, or maybe his pulse was there, just very weak. I had a sigh of relief when I heard he was going to survive. In the meantime, Greenfield High School was closed tomorrow for investigation. The principal Smith and Gabriel turned out to be dead, which for many was a sigh of relief. But who would be the next villain in my story? Right now it seems to be slowly Mr. Franklin, but the last person he killed that I know of was Joshua, and I had gotten over his death already. I had hope for the future. Clyde wasn't dead yet, and two troublemakers were finally gone from the Earth's surface. That didn't mean more troubles on the horizon. Though, Greenfield High School's first ever football game of the year was being hosted on the 5th, and I suspected that something bad was going to happen there. I was still planning on going with Adeline and Clyde to that game, and I hoped it would be fun. Are you alright? The police officer who was driving me back home asked as we turned onto my street. Yeah, I began to slowly tear up. I just went through a lot and I need some time to myself. I tried my best to hold back tears, but they kept coming out no matter how hard I tried to hold them back. Soon enough, I was back home. I was planning on staying in my room, reading up on Gabriel's journal, and writing my manuscripts all day tomorrow, and quite possibly all night too. I entered my house, waving goodbye to the kind officer. Leo, you're alright? My mom sympathetically asked as she dropped her whisker into the skillet she was cooking eggs in. Well, I plopped down on the couch as I began to bawl out. Just know that Mayor Xavier's killer is dead, and Greenfield High School's principal. Wait, what? You're saying that Mayor Xavier's killer, Gabriel, is dead? My mom scrambled to find the television remote as she turned the TV on. Sure enough, there's already a breaking news alert aired on the live television on the Milwaukee local news station. And following the television playing, a rhythm of knocks at our front door followed. Turns out a news station was here to interview me. Excuse us, may we please interview? The news reporter looked down at a notepad before looking back up at my mom. David Martinez. No thanks, you guys aren't interviewing my son whatsoever. My mom shut the door hard in their faces, locking it behind her. Leo, this is why I don't want you working at City Hall. We get all these unwanted visitors, and just wait a few months before we get some delinquents visiting. I'm already seeing some delinquents, and some are not. Shut up and go to your room. Go read up on whatever you find in these petty investigations you participate in. My mom's face flushed with anger as it became as red as a tomato. I scurried upstairs and went into my room. Perfect timing. I was feeling like reading up on Gabriel's journal and contemplating the scenes I had to sadly endure in person just an hour ago.